Welcome to Mastercard's 28 Minute to COP28 podcast series. We're here to embark on a journey through cutting edge topics, an intersection of innovation, technology, and many uncharted frontiers, all of them while keeping sustainability in the forefront. I'm your host, Andrea Pražáková. I lead Mastercard Foundry, ESG, and Gaming for Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And at Mastercard, we are super committing to push boundaries, exploring different territories, and fostering innovation. And little bit about us still. In 2021, we launched a global sustainability innovation lab in Stockholm, and the lab is dedicated to research and develop climate conscious products, exploring application in new technologies such as 5G, quantum, and advanced AI. So today, we will embark on a super extraordinary journey into a cosmos, a world where innovation and sustainability converge to shape the future of Earth and beyond. And I have to say, personally, space exploration really inspires me to reimagine places in the universe and underscore my responsibility to protect our wonderful and precious planet. So please allow me to welcome Rick. Rick is one of the top 100 influential people in the space and called one of the world's top space visionaries. And I believe that Rick helped even to coin the term new space, which is, something he's credited with and helped the, birth the new commercial space industry, which was highlighted by Elon Musk, Bezos, and also Richard Branson. He's a leading writer, speaker of six-time congressional witnesses, six-time congressional witness. Rick helped start also first mission to find water on moon, which is super fascinating. Signed the first space commercial data purchase agreement and led commercial trade take over of Russian Mir space station. Coming from Czech Republic, where my second language was Russian, which was like super fascinating. He also signed private astronaut to fly a space station and founded Space Frontier Foundation, and it's also on the founding members of X Prize. In 2015, he won World Technology Award along with Craig Venter of Human Genome Project. He founded SpaceFund venture capital company with 20 space companies in his portfolio, and is also a member of a U.S. Space Force Doctrine Organization. He's a host of New World Conference and Space Cowboy Ball in Austin. I think it's taking place in just, under a month, and his non-profit Airflight Foundation, which we'll be talking about today as well. And I think Rick's Space Revolution radio pod is on iHeart Radio Network and iRock Space Radio, and I would definitely encourage everybody to check it out. On a personal note, before I ask the first question, I have to say, when I told my son Dante, who is 13, that I will be interviewing Rick, and my son aspires to be astrophysicist, he just opened his massive eyes and say, "Mom, how do you know Rick?" So I think that, thank you so much, Rick, for being with us today at Mastercard COP28, and thank you for also helping me to earn some extra points at the home front. We only have 28 minutes to start, so, could you share some of your passion for space? Also, it intersects with all the commitments to sustainability. So I want to understand what motivates you to found it Space Frontier Foundation with the sustainability focus.
So the first thing I have to clarify is that I helped lead the new space movement, but some friends of mine actually made up the term new space.
Okay, cool.
By putting new and space together. I had been calling for many years for us to have a new space era, a new space industry, but they actually stuck the two words together into one word. So I have to give them credit for doing that. The Space Frontier Foundation, which you mentioned, is now being run by other folks. We started it many years ago. But for many a year there, we were sort of the bad boys and girls of space. And that is because we were taking a stand that comes from my mentor, Dr. Jerry O'Neill. Jerry O'Neill wrote the book, The High Frontier. And in this book, which came out before my time, but was called it was called The High Frontier. And he focused in on the idea that regular people like you and I could go into space and expand civilization. And we could do that with the resources of space and with free enterprise. But up until that point, and a lot of people today, you're seeing people fly into space and doing all kinds of things. Back then, It was only if you
Mhm.
were a government astronaut or a cosmonaut.
Right.
Regular people, no, you weren't invited. You couldn't talk about it. The conferences, nothing. And so we decided to step out and push forward with Dr. O'Neill's vision, which included, by the way, building an industry in space around the idea of space solar power. In 1988, he wrote an article talking about the fact that we were going to have a climate crisis and that we needed to look forward to the resources beyond the Earth. So,
Mhm.
for many years, we engaged in a battle, sort of what I call the space revolution, where we were kind of bumping heads with the aerospace complex, the big players, the government oriented approach to say, you know what, thank you very much. We had some great explorers here in North America called Lewis and Clark, and they did a lot of exploration, and they were employed by the government. And then the people kind of went out after them, and that's the way we were looking at it in terms of space. And I should point out, whenever I use the words frontier or I make these historical references, it is with a clear understanding that a lot of mistakes have been made in our human history,
Mm.
especially here in the United States, that with the indigenous people, and a lot of terrible things were done. However, when I'm talking about space, so far as we know, we don't have indigenous people. We aren't taking it from anybody. And in fact, and this is the core of what I am about, is we are moving into a place where there is no life to carry life out there.
Mm.
That's what excites me.
Mm. Before we go for, I like the statement you did about, how long time ago people already looked at solar-based, space-based power, right? And I think that's really fascinating that even today in 2023, many of the specialists are not even looking up, right? That there is very little knowledge about obviously how you can retrieve solar power from the sun or from the core of the earth itself, right? And or the atoms which are around the planet. And I think that's such an unexplored area still, even in between the people who are actually focusing on solar, right? And how you can beam the energy down and how many cities it can power. So I think that there is a great opportunity for businesses as well to expand in that area. So I think that that's it's great. And then you said it was so many years ago, but now today still, it is such a untouched territory.
Yeah, and I'll come back to why it's untouched in a moment,
Mm.
but I will say this in terms of developing what people call sustainability, which to me is only half the story, because I want to expand. I don't want to just
Hmm.
sustain life.
Yes.
There are two or three areas, probably three major areas where, by going out into space, we can help save the mother world. And she is our mother, and we need to save her. One is collecting energy in space, potentially, and beaming it back.
Right.
Um, Number two is the actual being able to harvest resources in space. If you're going to
Mm.
have an electric economy, you need what they call rare earth metals and
Mm.
all kinds of other things that people will say, well, we have plenty of them on the earth. Yes, but when we're harvesting them on the earth, we're mining them on the earth, we're actually hurting the ecosystem. There's
Hmm.
a lot of people that want to go mine the bottom of the oceans to find these metals. Well, that's going to hurt the Earth's ecosystem even more. Why not go out beyond the Earth where
Find
it's
it somewhere else.
dead
Hmm.
and bring it back? And then the
Mm.
third one, which I'll be talking about a little more in the next few months, but is the idea of if we get to an emergency situation where
Hmm.
the greenhouse effect is starting to warm up and the planet is starting to accelerate, which, by the way, we learned about by studying Mars and Venus.
Hmm.
We learned about these ideas. The idea of potentially putting what we call an earth shade or a sunshade between
Right.
the earth and the sun to limit the amount of light hitting the earth. So
Hmm.
those three big ideas are only part of it.
Mm.
But those are three areas where we could directly work to help save the earth. And if I can take a moment, it was very funny in the U.S. A study was commissioned by the White House to look at these ideas of how do you cool the planet, and they call them geoengineering.
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of geoengineering. The part of the problem is, maybe you sprinkle some stuff on the ocean or up in the clouds or something like that. The problem is once you do that, it can get out of control. You don't have any way to
Mm.
turn it off. However, and by the way, when they did the study, they specifically, it's in the study, they ignored space. They were
Mm.
told not to look at
Not to put it.
space.
Mm.
Right. And the thing is that if you do it in space, the beautiful thing about it is if you're putting up a little bit, it would cover only about 2% of a reduction would be enough to stabilize the climate where we are and give
Mm.
us a chance to get off of carbon. Um, but the thing is that you can do it a little bit at a time, and then you can move it out of the way. It's
Right,
like
right, right.
closing the blinds on your window, right? You close a
Mm.
little bit, open a little bit, so you
Mm.
can have control, which you don't have
Don't
with
have.
geo, right?
That's true.
So anyway, that those are some of the very big ideas that are out
Mm.
there. Um, but none of these ideas were possible so long as it had stayed as expensive as it was to go to
Mm.
space. And that's the big change that's about to happen.
I like what you say around the materials and what's happening on Earth, right? I look at us as obviously we are a technology company, and like many technology companies today, we generate massive amount of data. And one of the areas where I feel, we really also now looking to help customers is to look at data not as a commodity only, but as a carbon emission element, right? Because the trillions and trillions of data which are generated need some kind of data centers, and the data centers heat up, produce a lot of carbon emissions, right? So number one is companies like ours, right, would then go and say which data you actually need to keep. What is rubbish and you just need to put away? And if you need to keep it, for how long do you need to keep it? And what is the capacity? And then, I think there are conversations is can you then take the data center and maybe put them on moon in a lower orbit where the temperatures are lower and you can. So I think that there is so much innovation around not only looking at, what at the output, but what can we do to prevent it? And data is, I think, a good example, but also to consider, as you said, now not excluding space is the wrong suggestion, because often people think that you talk about data center when it's on cloud. People often think it's in a cloud, but it's still in a physical data center, right? And you have to create so much of CO2. So I think that I love the comparison which you did, in terms of what are the opportunities and how. And I want to stay a little bit of that size of the industry, because obviously you are considered the godfather of the space revolution, right? And which is led by Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But how do you, and you touched a little bit about where is it going, obviously where the new space economy started to evolve, right? And how do you see and envision that the space exploration and everything which is in front of us is and will be contributing more to the sustainable future of the Earth, right? Given that the space economy today is projected to be 1 trillion by 2030, which I still think is not enough. I think that there should be more money put into it, into that sector. And in the past, everything was government, but now we see that the private investments are getting so much bigger. And I think it increased by about 500% of it. So where do you see that growing, and how do you think it will really impact and contribute to some significant changes in terms of sustainability?
Well, the first thing that prefaces everything that we talk about is that we are on the edge of a major change.
Mm.
And this one, when I say on the edge, it's not 10 years, 15, 20 years away. It could be within the next 2 years. And what that changes is our ability to go to and from space cheaply and frequently.
Mm.
That is the big one.
Yeah.
That's the reason all of these things that people look at, they're like, we went to the moon so long ago, and why aren't we out there and all of that? Because it's been so expensive.
That's it. Yes.
The science fiction writer Robert Heinlein, I think I've got a couple of his books back here. I'm going to paraphrase him. He said that
Mm-hmm.
if you're 100 miles up, or 100 kilometers up, let's say, you're halfway to anywhere in the universe, and
Mm.
that's the key. That's the key. We
I
sit at the
love that.
bottom of a well, Like we're at the bottom of a well and we can see up there, but it's so hard to get up there. So what Elon Musk is working on with his Starship vehicle, or Jeff Bezos, which you're going to start seeing it's called New Glenn. It's going to start flying next year. And then a gentleman I'm going to be interviewing myself named Peter Beck from New Zealand has a company called Rocket Lab. And
Yes.
several other companies. It's not just these two billionaires. There's a bunch of companies. What they're working on is the ability to reuse their rocket ships. And by the way, I use the word ship because you don't throw ships away.
Yeah.
Right.
And we see with Elon Musk what happened to be able to land back, obviously, the rockets which he launched, right?
And that's what he's working on with Starship. And when they get Starship flying, or New Glenn, or the I think it's called the Electron that Rocket Lab is working on, when these vehicles start flying regularly, and what they do is they go up, they do their thing, they come back, they get some more fuel, they go back up again. And the cost, which for many, many years has been around $10,000 a kilo, roughly, is going to drop to potentially less than 100 per kilo. That means you and I and the people watching this and listening will be able to go.
Yeah, we become interplanetary species in the end, right?
Yeah, and it means that business plans, it means that ideas like your storage, right? Data is cheap and free. It's electrons, right? But building those systems and the people out there and that'll be managing them and all of this will be able to do it so cheaply that we can break out. I tell people that the day after the Starship, not that it flies, but the first time it flies, it comes back, it gets refueled and flies again. After that day, it's as important as the airplane or the steam.
I just wanted to say that exactly when it was such a luxury item to even for people to, when they saw the planes, and now it's such an average mode of operandi, right? To get on a plane and fly anywhere you want in the world. So it's a fantastic comparison.
Yes. Remember, back in the day, and it was, again, before my time, people who flew on jets were called jet setters, right? Because they were the only people that could afford those tickets. Yeah. And now everybody can. So when this happens in the next probably 2 years. So I'm not talking about some, people talk about fusion in 10 years or this in 10 years. No, the next 2 years, this will be happening. We're going to start seeing the possibility of the breakout. Here in the US, we have, I think, 5, they're not all in the US, but 5 private space stations that already have more than $100 million in funding each, which makes them real.
Right.
Are already being put together. 5 of them, right? Imagine that. We'll have this, what I call sort of the orbital street out there now. And we'll start having these companies and hotels and medical facilities and all of this starting to spring up in orbit. And then NASA and ESA and the others are all planning to go back to the moon. India, China's going. It's just going to accelerate so quickly.
You were talking about books, and one of my favorite is the Genesis Machine by Amy Webb, right? And then there is a chapter inside which simulates that for 2 years there are experiments which are put under Earth that people would simulate what would happen if they would live somewhere else, right? And they need to create a political system, currency, healthcare. And I think that one of the things which really sparks your imagination is to say how much of business opportunity it is. That many times people think, I do this job, but I couldn't do it somewhere else. But when you read this, and it's not science fiction, as you said, this is something which is real. It could be a real experiment, right? What would you do? How would you treat people in these places if they're sick? How would you pay? Would you have a barter system, or would you have a new currency? How would you send money from Mars to here? I think there is so much, interesting. And I want to go, to be able to dream about this, right? I want to move a little bit to your other venture, which is, the Earthlight Foundation. I think that I went to your website and I really love that the Dreamers Club. I thought that it really touched me. I had goosebumps just to think that, you want to give future generation future worth living. And I thought it's such a powerful statement. And that the message is that you want to put telescopes in every school who wants it so that the kids can look up and dream. And I feel that what you just described, all of this needs people on earth, which are willing to dream and to look up. And can you maybe have, as you said, permission to dream, right? And we're trying to do the same in tech, where we have these, girls for tech, and we have currently about 3.5 million girls across 60 countries with 20 different languages. To bring them into technology, you bringing them to think about space. I really want to know more, and what Earth Life Mission is about, and how does it feed into the sustainability from us humans and the planet.
So I'll come back to the dream scopes in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll talk to you a little bit about Earthlight. So I've been doing this, as you know, for a couple of days. For quite
Couple
a while.
Of months.
Yes, and I've spent a lot of that time trying to prepare the way, trying to help bring the costs down. We passed the laws that enabled SpaceX to launch and fly and all of that, and that's great. And then I got into sort of the business plan stuff and venture capital and these kinds of things, to sort of how do you pay for it all. And then recently I have, well, for a long time I've been talking about it, but recently I've been zeroing in on what is underneath it all. Right? It's
Right.
Yes, we're always talking about how do we close a business plan and all of that, and what are the products and this and that and the other, and that's going to take care of itself. It's going to be amazing what's possible. The big question underneath all of it is why we go. Why do we do this? What is it that is so important about this happening? And so I put the Earthlight Foundation together to begin focusing in on that. And in the Earthlight concept, we have this idea that we have a purpose. Humanity is here for a purpose. And it's funny, because that's a question a lot of people have.
Right.
Oh, I've got a million likes online. I have 4 Teslas in my driveway. I have a big house. I know so I get to go to all the cool stuff. And yet we feel a little bit empty inside. We want to know what we're here for. We see the planet, people breaking into groups and silos of people, and they're fighting and all of these kinds of things. And so I started looking at this and thinking, okay, what is it that can bring us together? What is the universal truths that lie underneath this? And so what we came up with was the 3 principles of Earthlight. The first principle is to protect and expand the domain of life. In other words, we want to save the mother world and all of our beautiful partner species that are here on this planet, clean up the mess we've been making, because we've been taking, and we need to stop that and begin to give it back. But we want to go one step further, and that is take this amazing life and begin to expand it to places that are now dead, places like the moon and Mars, where there is no living stuff there that we know of. There may be a little bit on Mars, and I hope we find it. But let's go out there. I want to see trees on the moon. I want to see butterflies on Mars. I want to see green expanding out into the solar system. That's number 1. Then number 2 is to honor and evolve civilization. What I mean by that is it's time that we look at all of us and say, you know what? I honor you. I know you have a different point of view. It's one of the great things about our time right now is that we have the ability to look back in the past like no other human civilization has ever had. The people that lived in Rome in the early hundreds thought it had been built by giants.
Yes,
because
that's
it was
true.
just ruins, right? But we can look back now through our telescopes and see the beginning of the galaxies and the universe. Every day, something is coming out of archaeology to tell us about how civilization began. And we can begin to see and we have movements. Here in the US, we had Black Lives Matter, or the Me Too movement of women stepping up and saying, I'm here. What those mean are we're getting the chance to see a different view of our history. And that is all beginning to come together so that we can really understand who we are and where we came from. So let's honor that and then evolve the next step. Going out into this new frontier, this new place, allows us ways to interact together that we've never had before. Ways to, if you're living inside of a bubble and everything outside is going to kill you, believe me, you become family. There's one place in the solar system where Russians and Americans get along great and love each other, and it's the space station, right? You care about each other. So let's evolve humanity, see what we can do. That the stuff you see on Star Trek, which is probably my favorite series of all time, where all kinds of people are working together in a higher purpose. And then the third one is the fun one, and that is to explore and experience everything in the universe. I mean, think about that. When I do my talks, I show a picture of my daughter, who's now 10, when she touched a flower for the first time, for the very first time in her life, and then everything in her mind, everything from then on was different, right? What we are as human beings comes to its highest point when we cross from the known into the unknown. And we can't get comfortable. We can't sit on our couch, forever, or as civilization sit on our couch. We need to go into new places, try new things, experience and experiment. And the universe is out there. It's essentially infinite. And let's go. Imagine if you lived
Be
in a
curious.
society.
Yes.
Yes. Be curious. Don't judge. Be curious. Let's get out there and look. And imagine, if you can, a society that operated from those three principles as its core. And we were going out. We were looking at each other and going, let's go together. And let's go plant trees on the moon. Let's go out there. And if we can find life, let's go. I want to find them. I want to meet them. And let's create community and go outward. We're not attacking this time. Humanity, since it came out of the cave and lit a fire,
They're attacking each other.
Has been attacking each other and nature.
Yes.
We go forward, nature retreats. We had this idea that somehow it had been given to us. Let's use it all up. No, let's get rid of that idea. The idea is we are the caretakers. We are the seed carriers of Gaia, the planet itself.
Planet Earth, yes.
Go. And there's plenty for everybody. So let's go out there and try this new approach. And so with Earthlight, what I'm trying to do is get that idea across also to my community. I want the space industry to think that way. Because, when you look, for example, at orbital debris, the garbage that's around the planet.
Yeah.
The reason that's there, it's terrible. And the reason
it's
that's
horrible.
there is because we're thinking like ancient, like we used to think. We have this use it and throw it away culture.
Throw it away. Exactly.
And here we are entering this new frontier, this new place. And we're going to carry these same old habits. No, we have to change that. So I call them the 4 R's: reuse, replace, recycle, repurpose, and then the 5th one would be resources. Right? Live that way. When somebody is floating in a space station above the Earth, rebreathing their own air, re-drinking their own urine that's been cleaned up and turned into water, this person is very much aware of the environment. It's a great model. And what a great thing for the generation that's coming up to say, you know what? We're going to try this new thing and we're going to do it in a beautiful way. And you're invited. And we're not just dumping this used up planet that we've almost destroyed on top of you. Here, clean this up. Thank you, kids. Sorry, we made a mistake. You get to clean it up. We can't do that. Let's give them something hopeful. And that is save this planet, save the mother world, and begin to carry her seeds out.
I really like
carried away there.
No, I love it, and I like what you said, because if you look at all this, everybody's putting satellites up, but there is very little discussion of how much to the public, at least, right, which is not well formed about space, is how much trash is actually floating, and how they need to now navigate between the things which we as humans, because that didn't happen by itself, right? We as humans have these old pieces just floating around us because we've been carrying our old habits. And I think that, you made some really interesting points also about, people living together in the International Space Station without issues, right? Because there are they have the same purpose and they have the same values, and it doesn't matter if I speak Czech or English or Russian or German and what my political or religious beliefs are. And I think that it goes very much also what we believe here. We also have people, planet, and prosperity. So everything we're trying to do is in these three pillars, right? Which is super, super important. And I love that you got carried away, because ultimately we need to educate our kids and change ourselves not to do the same mistakes we did over so many years here on planet Earth. And the technology today is here. You made the example with drinking the recycled urine. If you I lived in South Africa for 9 years, and if you go to the lodges in the national parks, that's what they do. They don't drink their recycled urine, but at least I'm not aware about it. But when you stay in the lodge, they recycle the water, then they repurpose it, then they use it in the bathroom, then they take it from the bathroom and they use it for watering the plants, and then they use it in the pools, right? And
Right.
everything can be reused, as you said, recycle and reimagine in this circularity, in the real form of circularity, even in space. So yeah, really great. So you want to touch a little bit on the part with what you're doing around the kids, and how you building
Yes.
new generation of people who actually are inspired by space. Don't think that it's just a science fiction movie, but these are real jobs for real people which can change the world.
Yes. And the Dreamscopes project, I'll talk about that. My friends, there are other organizations out there, Space for Humanity. A friend of mine, Dylan Taylor, started it, and other groups that are doing things like raising money so that people that didn't have a chance to fly are going to be able to have a chance to fly. And they've already flown their first few people. Um, I wanted to do something similar, but I wanted to inspire the the imagination of children, and a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you don't ever know which kid is going to turn out to be the one,
Right.
right? Which one is going to be, whoever, the Gandhi or the Musk or the Edison or the Steve Jobs. You don't know that, but you do know that at some point early in their life, a little switch clicked somewhere.
Mm. Like your
Uh,
daughter with the flower.
Hopefully, yes, and others, and so what happens is, what can we do to inspire that? One thing that I noticed was that when somebody looks through a telescope for the first time, no matter what age they are, how sophisticated, poor, whatever, they look through a telescope for the first time and they see the rings of Saturn, or they
Mm.
see that there are actual mountains on the moon. That moment is literally world expanding. It literally expands their imagination. And it does also help you appreciate the earth. It shows you that there's an out there that you are in and you are a part of. And so we I came up with this term many years ago called permission to dream. And the idea of permission to dream is that dreams know no boundaries. Whether you're living, in a tenement, whether you're living in an apartment, whether you're living in a hut as a
Mm-hmm.
child, your dreams soar. And only you give yourself permission to dream, and only you can take dreams away from yourself. So let's give as many kids as we can that permission to dream. So I was in Sri Lanka many, many years ago visiting my mentor, a gentleman named Arthur C. Clarke. He wrote the book and the movie 2001 Space Odyssey,
Yes, very
many
famous.
things. Very famous. And I was privileged to call him Uncle Arthur. And when I was there, I saw a little telescope in a school in the jungles out there. And it was so important to them that they had put a little sticker on it with the people's name who gave it to them.
Mm.
I thought, wow, that's incredible. So a few years later, a friend of mine, George Whitesides, who later became the CEO of Virgin Galactic, and I think now he's running to be a state representative or a representative in Congress, um, arranged to start sending telescopes to kids, and people would carry them around the world as checked luggage, so we didn't have to pay freight. And we started getting these pictures back of kids like in Madagascar and places like that. And they would have like a mud schoolhouse and stuff and standing next to the telescope.
Mm.
Right. And it was just amazing. And a couple of years ago at the Space Cowboy Ball, which is an event we hold here in Austin to raise funds for these kinds of things, I had a kid raise his hand while I was trying to talk. And I'm trying to ignore him, and I'm, how do you do that? Because this hand just stayed in the air, and finally I said, "Okay, can I help you?" And this young man stood up, and he was from Asia, and he was very awkward, and he said, "Sir, my name is," and I forgot his name, but and I work for the space company here in the United States. I was one of the kids that got one of those telescopes.
Oh, wow. What a great
I
story.
was losing it. I was like, oh my God. And so what we're doing now is we have dream scopes. And dream scopes, in fact, one of them is here behind me. We're going to be shipping those out to schools, middle schools, anywhere on the planet, getting our act together now. We've had a little bit of funding that was donated by a group called the National Space Society. We're placing the first 4 in a small town called Victoria, Texas, which has a lot of underprivileged children. We're going to be sending one to Africa, and then I think one to Eastern Europe to get started. And the idea is that people can sponsor these telescopes.
Okay, so you can buy an NFT, right? Which is and then based on what you buy,
that part of it, you'll be a member of the Dream Dealers Club. But what's important to some folks is you'll be able to put your name on the telescope.
Name on it,
right? And you could say maybe, I want to have one put in my old school in Slovakia or somewhere, and we will arrange, for the donation price to have that telescope delivered. Plus, we give a small check to the school, because sometimes when you get a gift like that, it actually costs you more to figure out how to pay the teacher or whatever to work with it. So we're doing both, and we're just getting started now. We're looking for people who want to donate to this, and we think it's going to be fun. And again, going out into the world and letting these kids see what's out there, what's beyond their everyday lives, and they can project their dreams. Now, some of those children will maybe study a little bit harder. Some of them, it's going to run right past, as you know, with any group of kids. Some of them they'll never get it. But some kids are going to study a little harder. Some kids may decide to go into STEAM or STEM topics and studies. Some of them may decide to become engineers. Some may go into space. And then my ultimate bet is that out of every X number, 100,000 kids, maybe one of them becomes someone who says, you know what, I want to go start that community on Mars. And that becomes their life. And 100 years from now, some kid who looked through that telescope has expanded some community on the moon or Mars, or built a city in space.
Because of that one look he had through a telescope, which
he or she, and they've said, you know what, this changed my life. So, because lives are trajectories, and if you can change sometimes just a little bit here, what we call a vector in space, a little bit of a shift here means a big shift there in the future. So a tiny shift. I like astronomy. I like science. This is so cool. Why are there mountains on the moon? Where did the Earth come from? Who am I? What am I doing here in the universe? And that begins to change their lives, and their futures begin to change. So we're not going to change everybody. We're not going to get a million astronomers or a million space workers, but some percentage, and that's worth it.
Yeah, no, I think it's really inspiring, and I think that's what we're trying to do also with the Girls in Tech, right? Which I was mentioning, to say not probably everybody will become an engineer, but there will be some who maybe completely invent systems which will be then used for some payment technologies on Mars or Venus or Moon, right? I think that's it's really, really fascinating. And I'm just checking the time. I want to go to one more. We spoke about the planet and Earth and the responsibility of recycling and the children, and I think that what I wanted to ask is, where is the balance? Because you spoke about boundaries, and the boundaries are getting pushed, right? And boundaries of innovation, and innovation comes at costs, right? So how do you see that we ensure sustainability for Earth, especially, considering, and I saw some of the articles you published as well about the environmental impact of the space activities, because obviously we are all excited that we can do all of these things, but there is a effect of all of these experiments which we are seeing around ourselves? Where do you see it's the right way to balance it? And what are some of the control mechanisms that we, all these new experiments, as I said, just don't do more damage when they will, do on a short-term basis?
Well, again, going back to that philosophy, if we have everybody operating, or our community, our industry operating from the philosophy, an Earth-like type philosophy, or something like it, we can begin to apply that everywhere. One of the things we're circulating lately, we call it the Earth Space Pledge. And the Earth
Yeah, I
Space
saw that.
Pledge, the Earth Space Pledge. Right now, we're just circulating it to the nonprofits in space, but we want people to sort of absorb the idea. Changing conversations is so important. And what it says is, it goes back to what we were talking about before. There are three parts to it. I like threes. I don't know why, but three parts to the Earth Space Pledge. And the first one says that as an industry here on the ground, that we will work towards being as sustainable as possible. The development, the building of the rockets, and the building of the hardware, and all of this type stuff, so we can start really, honoring and taking care of the mother world that way. The second phase of it is, again, what we were chatting about, the idea of making sure that the space around the Earth
is clean,
respected, and cleaned. That we have to really get out there now, reverse the damage that's been done through this use it and throw it away culture, and begin cleaning up what's happening around the Earth. And then the third one goes the next step further out, and that is that wherever we go as human beings, we honor and respect the universe that we're moving out into. And the thing is, so often, and I know it's confusing to people sometimes, like my daytime hat, until I just now stepped away from running a venture capital company, but evil venture capitalist type person. And then here I am doing this Earth side thing, and they get confused. Like, and there's this, it's actually ridiculous. It's an absurd concept that somehow creating an economy and making a profit is against taking care of the mother world and the Earth and each other. That's not true at all. That's a human construct. That's like, if I'm on the right, I have to be opposed to the environmental activities or something. That's ridiculous. It has nothing to do with it. When you're on if you're a conservative and you're pro-business, the way you should come at this, instead of like, I'm anti those environmentalists, is my country could lead the development of space solar power, or we can make money by cleaning up the environment. It's ridiculous the way we have it, this weird dichotomy. So let's break that down and say, you know what? We can open this frontier and protect the planet. We can increase communications with each other by having great satellite systems in space without trashing the solar system. And we can go to these new worlds without leaving piles of trash and destroying things out there. And we can harvest the resources we need out there. Sometimes people will come to me and say, well, Rick, you're going to go out and destroy the ecosystem of the asteroids, which, first of all, it doesn't make sense if you understand the word eco. But I asked them, I said, well, would you rather get your resources out of a dead rock in space, or rip it from the heart of a living mountain ecosystem?
Yeah.
Which one do you want? All right, give us. Let's get logical here. Space, as far as we know, is dead. We have one precious little bubble of life that we're in charge of. So far, we have acted as if it is infinite. It isn't. It's a spaceship. We live in a spaceship. It has life support systems, the oceans, the forests, things like that. We have to respect those, take care of those, and then we can venture out in our tiny, small spaceships and go out there and begin to expand.
I really, really like the comparison of Earth to be a spaceship. I never thought about it from that perspective, and I think it's. I don't want to say it's a metaphor, but it's something. When I now digest what you just said, it's so real that actually we are a spaceship, right? But
we are literally, think about it for just a moment.
Yes,
we are literally right now moving at hundreds of thousands of kilometers an hour through space. We're moving right now
Yes.
in this bubble. It just happens to be a round spaceship,
Mm.
you know, with a very, very thin skin on the outside, and we're moving through space. We are on a spaceship. It's not a metaphor, it's reality.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I read somebody said it. I can't remember who was it. Who said, we are monkeys who are sitting on a pile of rocks, which is going around in the universe, right? And I think that's where it goes. I have, I still had so many questions, but we are almost in the end. I wanted to ask you, obviously, for the people in the audience, right? Many of them maybe are not familiar with a lot of these topics which you said, and there could be bankers, there could be green startups in it, there could be other technology provider, maybe there are people in healthcare. What are some of the, if I am if I didn't think about space before, obviously I hope that somebody already thinks how they would apply for a banking license on Mars and who would be the first bank providing some payment systems and how could MasterCard support it. But if I'm in these different types of industries, what would you recommend how to make the first step on start to exploring, how can I help? To how can I maybe expand my business to the point which you just made, not to push it away, but there is so much opportunity where businesses can thrive and help utilizing and going into space while obviously building sustainable businesses. What would be your advice? Where should the people start?
Yes. I mean, it really you have to dive in, that's for sure. And there's some good books. Dr. O'Neill's book, even though it was written in the 70s, is sort of the Bible of all of this, called The
Mm,
High Frontier. There's actually a documentary on Apple called The High Frontier, because it's telling his story, which most people don't know about, even though those of us in the field do. I would look into coming to the events, the different, we have our conference, the New Worlds Conference, um, getting involved that way. Our community, probably because we're a bunch of nerds, are very bad at telling our story.
mm,
And it's unfortunate, but we just are not very good at it. We take it for granted. We're like, oh, of
yeah,
course it's going to happen. We're going to go do it. It's going to be Star Trek. We're
mm,
all going to go. Why don't you understand?
yeah,
And so you have to put yourself out into it. I'm happy to talk to anybody, anytime, as you can see. And let's have a dialogue. Let's have a conversation. Get involved. We certainly could use some help with Earthlight. We could certainly use some help with the Dreamscopes program. And there are a lot of good organizations out there. There's Space for Humanity, the different societies. Frank White, my friend who coined the term overview effect, about how you look back at the Earth. He's got his organization. There's just a lot of them.
mm,
You just have to get yourself out there in it. And when people tell you that this is about a few billionaires who are going to plunder and pillage the universe and leave us all behind, it's not true. It's just simply not true. Yes, they've gotten involved. I can show you where they got that bug when they were
yes,
children, right?
mm,
And it's not about that. It's about us going out together. And frankly, I'm glad they're spending their money doing that rather than trying to build bigger whatevers than each other.
mm,
Let's go together. But there is a lot of opportunity. I mean, my fund, we're going to be growing our fund. We're out looking for investors right now to go out. We have 20 companies, 21 companies we're investing in. And there's just so much opportunity. And I promise you this, probably by the time some of these people see this, the next Starship flight will happen,
so, mm,
right? And it might go just a little further than the last one.
mm,
And the one after that's going to go further and further. I think last time I was out there, I saw, I don't have the secret or not, I saw 7 of them that were already
mm,
built, ready to go. So they're just going to keep going. And so pay attention, but don't let people talk you out of the future. Don't let
I
people
like
take
that.
away your permission
Mm,
to dream.
mm,
It is only by us living into our dreams, reaching for our dreams, not taking no for an answer, that we go forward. And that is whether you're a business or a girl in school or whoever you are, don't let anybody ever tell you no. I was told that by a gentleman named Gene Roddenberry, who wrote Star Trek.
Mm.
And I had met him, real quick story, I had met him backstage. I was doing tech work because I had dropped out of all my classes, and he was there to give a lecture. And I said, I had seen somebody talk about Dr. O'Neill's stuff, and I had a couple of minutes alone with Mr. Roddenberry. I said, Mr. Roddenberry, I'm a terrible student. I yell at my teachers, I drop out of classes. I'm the worst kind of student, but I want to make it happen. How do I do that? And he said, don't let anybody tell you no. Always hang on to your dream. Always go for it. Study, learn, push yourself forward. I said, I know, but I'm such a bad student. I don't know what to do. I don't have all the degrees. He said, do you know what I did before Star Trek? I said, no. He said, I was a policeman in Los Angeles.
Wow,
I used
that's
to drive
interesting.
around in my little black and white car, and I had the Star Trek scripts laying on the seat next to me. He said, if I can do that, you can do it too. And it
Mm.
changed my life.
What a wonderful way, to finish the recording and the podcast. So, this was such an incredible journey with you, Rick, and I'm really express my deepest gratitude for sharing all of these insights and to share the passion and your personal stories. Your dedication to the space advocacy and to the sustainability on Earth and outside is just so inspirational. And I hope that the people who've been listening to us see this as opportunities and possibilities, that people are curious, that they don't give up their dreams, that they now see that whatever they do on Earth, they can do at Mars, or maybe their children can. They can be the doctors at the station in Mars, and businesses can maybe start new businesses by recycling things which are floating in the orbit, right? And that the bankers on the call think about how we will exchange values between the Earth and the stations, where maybe somebody will be mining the data centers, which will be managing all the information which we'll be producing here. So thank you so much. It was absolutely amazing. Thanks to our listeners, to staying with us today. Stay tuned for more engaging discussions on Mastercard 28 Minutes to COP28 podcast series. We will talk some more about innovation, technology, and obviously all with focus with sustainability and all our limitless possibilities. It's like the telescope. Let us use your telescope to look in the future and how we all can leverage and enjoy the life here on in space. Thank you very much.
Thank you.